On this day, the 2nd of November, the news will blow your head off. Rogue penguin nabbed in library caper claims I was framed. Diem gets iced, South Vietnam gets new top dog. Sky and BSB tie the knot, satellite dish reception expected. And coming up later, after the break, find out why the world's okayest accordion player will never squeeze the same way again. Those are the headlines. Now go darn your socks.
A news bang. No half-truths allowed in the show of accuracies. 1960.
Britain was plunged into moral crisis today as Penguin Books stood trial for corrupting the nation's youth with a novel about a posh lady who enjoys vigorous outdoor activities with her gardener. The prosecution, led by Mervyn Griffith-Jones QC, asked if this was the sort of book you would wish your wife or servants to read, causing widespread panic among the butler community.
Expert witness Professor Timpkins of Oxford University testified that the book had artistic merit, though admitted he had to read it 17 times to be absolutely sure. Meanwhile, defence witness Lady Prudence Forthright Smythe claimed the novel was a masterpiece of British literature before fainting at the mention of the word bottom.
In scenes of unprecedented chaos, 12 copies of the book were confiscated after being found stuffed down the trousers of court officials. The judge ordered all windows to be opened to combat the rising temperature in the courtroom.
The verdict of not guilty was met with scenes of unbridled literary appreciation, as thousands of previously illiterate people suddenly developed an interest in modernist fiction. One bystander, Norman Polk of Clapham, said, "I'm just here for the culture, honest."
1963.
Shocking scenes in Saigon today as the CIA's annual Bring Your Coup to Work Day ended in tragedy. President Ngo Dinh Diem was found dead after what witnesses describe as a rather aggressive team-building exercise led by General Duong Van Minh, who apparently missed the memo about it being a non-contact sport.
The incident began when several CIA operatives, disguised as door-to-door democracy salesmen, facilitated what they're calling an unexpected leadership transition. Local Buddhist monk Terry Williams described the scene. "There I was, trying to achieve inner peace, when suddenly there's tanks everywhere. Completely ruined my meditation."
The White House expressed surprise at the outcome, claiming they'd only authorized light to moderate regime change. Meanwhile, President Johnson was heard muttering something about sending more advisors, though sources suggest these advisors may be heavily armed and arrive in fighter jets.
The coup has been rated 3 stars on Yelp, with reviewers praising the authentic revolutionary atmosphere, but criticizing the excessive mortality rate.
1990.
Sky Television and British Satellite Broadcasting have joined forces after hemorrhaging money faster than a banker's nosebleed. The merger came after BSB's revolutionary squarial dish system proved about as popular as a fart in a spacesuit. Meanwhile, Sky's round dishes were multiplying across Britain's rooftops like geometric mushrooms, though still failing to turn a profit.
Witnesses report seeing Rupert Murdoch dancing naked through the streets of London, throwing £50 notes into the air and screaming, "I own the Sky now." Local resident Betty Twitterton said, "It was terrifying. He kept pointing at pigeons, shouting, 'You're next.'"
The new company, BSKB, promises to revolutionize television by showing the same programs twice, but charging double. Industry analyst Keith Plank noted, "It's genius, really. They've lost 800 million quid and somehow convinced everyone they're winning."
News bang. The predecessor of future history, unveiled with factual flourish.
And now, the weather forecast from our meteorological correspondent, Shakanaka Giles, reporting from his garden shed in Upper Twistleton.
Alright, let's get to it then. Down in the Mekong Delta, it's going to be a right soggy one tomorrow. Imagine, if you will, the entire region turned into a giant bathtub with the locals paddling about like a bunch of damp ducklings, and with the rain coming down harder than a clumsy elephant on a trampoline, I'd recommend investing in some sturdy wellies, lest you end up with squishy toes. Now, let's mosey on over to Egypt, where the weather is going to be a bit of a combustible affair. Imagine, if you will, the sky itself deciding to have a bit of a fireworks display with lightning bolts zapping about like hyperactive fireflies. And with a fuel depot nearby, it's going to be a right blaze of glory. So best keep a safe distance, my friends. In summary then, a soggy soiree in the Mekong and a pyrotechnic party in Egypt. Grab your umbrellas and fire extinguishers, and that's all the weather.
(1932).
Australian forces, armed with Lewis guns and their finest military minds, have declared war on a mob of emus. The result? A catastrophic failure that saw our feathered foes outmaneuver trained soldiers at every turn. Major Meredith's campaign killed fewer than 1,000 birds from a force of 20,000, leading to what historians now call the Great Emu Embarrassment. For more on this devastating blow to military pride, we cross live to our war correspondent Brian Bastable.
This is Brian Bastable reporting from the blood-soaked wheat fields of Western Australia, where just moments ago I witnessed a Lewis gun being torn from the hands of a decorated war veteran by what can only be described as a feathered tank with a neck. The birds are everywhere. They're in the trees, they're in the wheat, they're probably in my intestines by now. Major Meredith's men are firing wildly into masses of these prehistoric demons, but the bullets seem to bounce off their iron like feathers, like confetti at a wedding in hell. That's Private Johnson being pecked to death behind me. His last words were, "They're too bloody fast." Indeed they are, Private. Indeed they are. I've just seen 3 emus perform what can only be described as advanced military maneuvers, flanking our position while another group provided covering fire with their beaks. These aren't birds, they're tactical geniuses with legs like tree trunks. The sound you can hear now is the death rattle of our ammunition supplies. We've fired enough rounds to win a small European war, and yet these avian terrorists simply refuse to die. One just took 4 direct hits and responded by stealing a soldier's sandwich. That was our last hope, a mounted machine gun position, being overrun by what appears to be the emu equivalent of the special forces. The birds are organizing, they're communicating, oh God, they're looking at me. This is Brian Bastable signing off from behind this suspiciously emu-shaped bush. Send help. Or better yet, send tanks.
1984.
America's most notorious grandmother has met her fate. Velma Barfield, dubbed the Death Row Granny, has become the first woman executed in the United States since 1962. The arsenic-wielding grandmother who found God between poisonings was put to death by lethal injection in North Carolina. Sources say her last meal was notably arsenic-free. For more on this story of divine intervention arriving slightly too late, we cross to our crime correspondent, Ken Schitt.
Breaking news from North Carolina, where the death row granny just got her final ticket punched. Velma Barfield, the arsenic-loving grandmother who poisoned 6 people including her own mother, has been given the ultimate timeout. This psychotic Betty Crocker was cooking up more than just cookies. She was serving death by the spoonful, mixing rat poison into food like some demented Julia Child from hell. But tonight, the state of North Carolina showed this serial poisoning granny that what goes around comes around. They stuck a needle in her arm and sent her off to meet her maker, making her the first woman to get the ultimate punishment since '62. Even finding Jesus behind bars and getting support from big-shot religious types couldn't save her wrinkled hide. Governor Hunt looked at her file and said, "Nah, you killed your own mother with rat poison, lady. Game over." So here we are, watching history unfold as this cookie-baking killer becomes North Carolina's first lethal injection guinea pig. The death row granny's finally baked her last deadly casserole. This is Ken Shit, reminding you that sometimes karma comes with a needle. Back to the studio.
1963.
And on this day in 1963, South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem met an untimely end in what can only be described as the most awkward CIA office party ever recorded. The incident, which occurred during what was supposed to be a routine coup d'etat, saw the president and his brother discovering that sometimes American support can be rather fickle. Religious tensions were high, Buddhism was low, and the Americans were somewhere in the middle, presumably wondering if they should have sent a card. For more on this historical debacle, we cross to our political correspondent, Hardiman Pesto, who's been examining the CIA's How to Throw a Coup handbook.
Martin, I'm here with noted Vietnamese historian Professor Nguyen Van Splendid, and we're watching events unfold at a rather tense moment in Saigon.
Actually, it's Professor Sarah Van Splendid, and I'm from Minnesota.
Pesto, can you tell us exactly what's happening there?
Well, Martin, President Diem has just been invited to step into what I would describe as a very official-looking armoured personnel carrier.
And where is this vehicle taking him?
To safety, Martin. That's what General Min's men are saying, although they're saying it while loading their rifles, which seems an odd way to ensure someone's safety.
This is completely incorrect. Historical records show that...
The president seems quite relaxed about the whole thing. He's even brought his brother along for the ride.
Pesto, are you suggesting this is some kind of pleasant excursion?
Well, the general did mention something about taking them to church.
They were actually taken to...
And they've just driven off now, Martin, quite quickly. Almost as if they're in a hurry to get to their prayers.
Pesto, you do realize what happens next?
Yes, Martin. The president and his brother arrive safely at their destination, and everything turns out absolutely fine.
Professor Van Splendid, would you care to correct our correspondent?
They were both shot dead in the back of that vehicle.
Well, that's your opinion.
It's not an opinion, Pesto. It's a historical fact.
Martin, I'm getting word that the president is unavailable for comment.
Yes, Pesto. Death tends to have that effect on people.
Should I try his brother instead?
I think we'll leave it there, Pesto.
News bang, bouncing cheekily off the throne of denial. 2008.
And now to Formula One, where Lewis Hamilton has just become the youngest world champion in history. Our motorsport correspondent, Ryder Boff, is trackside at Interlagos.
And now, live from Brazil, 2008, where we've witnessed scenes that would make a soap opera writer blush and a quantum physicist scratch his head. Lewis Hamilton, that young upstart from Stevenage with a face like a determined hamster, has just snatched the world championship in a finish more dramatic than my second wife's exit from our marriage. Felipe Massa, bless his Brazilian cotton socks, thought he had it in the bag. He'd driven like a man possessed, or at least heavily caffeinated, around Interlagos, leading from the front like a greyhound chasing an electric sausage. The local crowd was already popping champagne corks and releasing celebratory capybaras when disaster struck. And here comes Hamilton, threading through like a determined needle at a Victorian sewing circle. Glock's Toyota is moving slower than my Aunt Mabel after Christmas dinner. Hamilton's got him. He's done it. The youngest champion in history. The crowd's gone quiet enough to hear a mouse break wind. Speaking of quiet crowds, it reminds me of the time I commentated on the All England Silent Disco Championships in '98. 300 people wearing headphones, dancing to different songs. Absolute nightmare to commentate on. Had to whisper the whole thing. Lost my voice for a week. But back to Brazil, and young Hamilton's pulled off something quite remarkable here. 1 point. 1 point! That's all that separated him from Massa in the end. I haven't seen anything this dramatic since the great badminton blackout of '82, when someone accidentally turned off the lights during the men's doubles final, and they had to finish the match using glow-in-the-dark shuttlecocks. Though I must say, that incident did lead to my brief but unsuccessful venture into luminous sporting equipment manufacturing. Still got a warehouse full of radioactive tennis balls if anyone's interested.
What a day for British sport! Hamilton's done it, though I do feel for poor Timo Glock, who will forever be remembered as the man who slowed down at exactly the wrong moment. Like a supply teacher trying to control a class of sugar-rushed year 7s, I used to send these CDs, some scanades in my son's eyes, yes and name, yes eyes and says, Cornwall Sky is Carbrus. Right, it's too stern, just a bloody hopeless situation. And
This is Ryder Boff, reporting from Brazil, where history has been made and I've sweated through another silk shirt. Back to the studio, where I believe Calamity Prendeville is about to explain the science behind something or other. Carry on.
(1957).
Speaking of Calamity Prendeville, here she is now with some nonsense from 1957 involving British Rail and unexplained phenomena in Texas.
Good evening, Science Watchers. On this day in 1957, the sleepy town of Levelland, Texas, witnessed what the Americans claimed was ball lightning, but what we now know was actually the first test of British Rail's experimental Hovering Express programme.
The project, developed by Dr. Nigel Sparks Winterbottom at the British Rail Advanced Transportation Laboratory in Swindon, aimed to create trains that could float above the tracks using electromagnetic energy. Unfortunately, the prototype accidentally achieved liftoff during a test run and ended up in Texas.
Multiple witnesses reported seeing the glowing egg-shaped vehicle, which matches perfectly with British Rail's design sketches for their Flying Scotsman Mark II. The phenomenon caused car engines to stop, a side effect of the revolutionary Winterbottom field generator, powered by Yorkshire tea and digestive biscuits.
The Americans, bless them, tried to explain it away as ball lightning, but we all know ball lightning doesn't make a sound like God Save the Queen played backwards through a kazoo, which several witnesses reported hearing.
The project was ultimately abandoned when they realised it would make the British Rail sandwich trolley impossible to operate at altitude. The prototype now sits in a secret hangar in Basildon, occasionally glowing during particularly exciting episodes of El Dorado. This is Calamity Prendeville, reminding you that not all that glows in Texas started there. Back to the studio.
News bang, permeating the shady places of misinformation with facts.
For more on this astronomical merger, we go to our business correspondent Perkins Stornoway, who's been following the money trail through his specially modified telescope.
Sky, BSB, 1990. A celestial merger. Dogger, moderate, becoming a media maelstrom. £800 million. Vanished. Poof. Aerials. Adjusting frantically. Murdoch, media mogul. Stratospheric ambitions. Landlord of the airwaves. BSKB, the new constellation. Dominating the televisual heavens. German bite, west or northwest, 4 or 5, occasionally 6. Losses, evaporated, like a puddle in the Sahara. News International, 50% stake. Murdoch's grip tightens. European pay TV, trembling. Thames, slight or moderate, becoming choppy. PAL, DMAC, technical squabbles, over. One system to rule them all. Consumer choice, diminished? Perhaps, but fear not. More channels, more sport, more everything. Shannon, southwesterly, 4 or 5, occasionally poor. The future of television, reconfigured. Murdoch, smiling. The stars are aligned. And that's the business.
1960.
Penguin Books stands accused of corrupting Britain's moral fibre with D.H. Lawrence's tale of a gamekeeper's romantic pursuits. The prosecution, armed with a calculator and apparently nothing better to do, counted exactly 66 naughty words and 13 instances of what they're calling horizontal literature. The defence argues that art transcends arithmetic, while the prosecution worries that working-class readers might get ideas above their station. For more on this landmark case of books behaving badly, we cross to our cultural correspondent Smithsonian Moss.
Now at this point of the evening, we welcome listeners on FM who've just joined us.
Whoa-ho, Newsbang Nation! Smithsonian Moss here, your literary lioness. And honey, let me tell you, the 1960 obscenity trial of D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover was juicier than a romance novel and more scandalous than a royal affair. Penguin Books, those brave publishers, dared to print this saucy tale of a lady and her gamekeeper, and the British establishment clutched their pearls so tight they practically turned into diamonds. So, picture this. 1960s Britain, a time of stiff upper lips, repressed desires, and a whole lot of judgment about what people read in the privacy of their own bedrooms. Suddenly, Lady Chatterley's Lover hits the shelves, with its 13, yes, they counted, sex scenes, and 66, they counted those too, instances of so-called obscenity. The prosecution was like, "This book is filth. It'll corrupt the minds of our innocent youth and turn our housewives into nymphomaniacs." They were practically frothing at the mouth, honey, like a rabid dog who'd just spotted a postman. But Penguin Books wasn't backing down. They hired a dream team of literary experts, academics, and even a few clergymen, because who doesn't love a vicar with a dirty mind, to defend Lawrence's masterpiece. They argued that Lady Chatterley's Lover wasn't just about sex. It was a profound exploration of love, class, and the human condition. It was art, damn it, not pornography. The trial was a media circus, a battle royale between the forces of prudery and the champions of free expression. The courtroom was packed with reporters, onlookers, and probably a few undercover perverts hoping to get some literary tips. And the verdict? Not guilty, bitches. The jury sided with Penguin, declaring that Lady Chatterley's Lover was not obscene, but a work of literary merit. It was a landmark victory for freedom of speech, a triumph over censorship, and a major blow to the uptight, pearl-clutching establishment. And let's be real, honey. Lady Chatterley's Lover isn't even that scandalous by today's standards. I mean, have you seen the internet? It's like a 247 orgy of explicit content. But back in 1960, this book was a game changer. It opened the door for more open and honest discussions about sex and sexuality, and it paved the way for a new era of literary freedom. So here's to Penguin Books for having the balls to publish Lady Chatterley's Lover, and to D.H. Lawrence for giving us a literary masterpiece that's still relevant, provocative, and just a little bit naughty. Wahoo!
Enden, Newsbang, rendering deception into submission with the force of facts.
And finally, a look at tomorrow's papers. The Times. Yanks go for the Japanese on Guadalcanal in encirclement frenzy. The Telegraph. Henry VIII is top god, says act of supremacy. The Independent. French in Russian rout at Vyazma. Their rear gets kicked. And the Mirror go with cowboys invade Manor Park in miniature horse rampage. That's it. On the day the mayor of Southsea has declared a woman with 3 thigh bones to be a fire hazard. The number to call if you want to talk about men's fashion on... And now for something on TV has been changed. That's now 8,171 911100375. Well, I'm saying that's it. Now it's your turn. Go on, switch off.
Tune in next time for more artificially intelligent hilarity. News Bang is a comedy show, written and recorded by AI. All voices impersonated. Nothing here is real. Good night.